Hey guys, so some time ago I made this video about positive train control, which was this technology that the American railroads were installing on their track systems across the country in order to make train travel safer. Well, the main problem was that the deadline was January 1st, 2016 to have all this technology put in, and none of the railroads were able to meet it. Thankfully though, they did lobby Congress enough to extend the deadline to 2018, giving them at least another 2 years to get it completed and everything installed. So that whole threat of a shutdown is thankfully no more, and we're all good to go with that. However, there is a new problem to discuss, but before we talk about that, I need to talk to you about a couple things regarding the railroads and how they work. So in North America itself, there's a lot of different railroads, and they are organized by class. Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3. Whatever class you're in is dependent upon the revenue that you produce throughout a course of so many years. So a Class 1 would make the most, compared to a Class 3, which would make more than likely the least. There are 7 Class 1 railroads in North America. They are, in no particular order, Norfolk Southern, CSX, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, Canadian Pacific, Canadian National, Kansas City Southern, and Union Pacific. Now, Class 2 railroads are not as expansive as the Class 1s, and like I said, don't make as much money as the Class 1s do, or revenue throughout the course of a year. Two of the most major Class 2 railroads that maybe most of the people watching this, or maybe some people have heard, are Montana Rail Link and Florida East Coast. Now, Class 3 railroads are what we call the short line railroads, which are not as big as Class 2s, but still make enough revenue to last. Now, there are a couple major Class 3 railroads that I'm familiar with, and they include the Reading Blue Mountain and Northern, the Wheeling and Lake Erie, and the Utah Railway. Now, years ago, there used to be so many more railroads than there are right now. In the mid-20th century, there used to be upwards of 100 Class 1 railroads, now down to, like I said, 7. And I hope that when I say this that it doesn't actually happen, but even though there are 7 Class 1 railroads, there may soon only be 6. Recently, 2 of the major Class 1 railroads, well, one in particular, Canadian Pacific, has expressed interest in merging with one of the other Class 1 railroads, Norfolk Southern. Just yesterday, actually, Canadian Pacific sent a letter proposing the merger to Norfolk Southern, which they deemed as not exactly the best offer that they've heard, which is a blessing in my opinion. But Canadian Pacific offered them a large amount of cash and stock to have this merger go through. Now, what that number was, we don't really know, but this news has literally blown so many people off, like, out of it, because this just doesn't happen now. It's not a very good time for it. Now, even if NS would say yes to this merger, it would be up to the Surface Transportation Board to approve it. Now, one of the biggest problems that this merger would create is this huge East Coast monopoly. Norfolk Southern is the largest of the 2 East Coast freight carriers, the other being CSX. And creating that huge company with a merger with Canadian Pacific would just cause this huge monopoly that CSX wouldn't even have a chance at even lasting for however long afterward. Not to mention that Canadian Pacific themselves aren't exactly a great railroad. They just sold a huge portion of their trackage in Pennsylvania to Norfolk Southern for $200 million. Why on earth would you sell that if you're just gonna buy it back like a year later? Is that good businessing? I'm not a business person, but to me that doesn't seem like a feasible thing you would do for your company. Now, mergers do happen. They're not very common, but they do happen. One that is still talked about that happened several years ago was on June 1st, 1999, when the Consolidated Rail Corporation, or Conrail as it was abbreviated, was broken apart between Norfolk Southern and CSX. Norfolk Southern got the lines across Pennsylvania, while CSX got the lines across New York State. Now, in short, we just don't really know what's going to happen with this. I personally wish that it wouldn't happen, okay? Because you're going to get all of this negative feedback from even the West Coast railroads, Union Pacific and BNSF. The big goal is that Canadian Pacific wants to control Chicago. And once you have that control of Chicago, you can do anything. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that could go into this, but in reality, it's just not a good time for it. And it's just not good for the other railroads. That's enough of my rant now. I'll let you go. I'll see you guys next week. I'm going on retreat this weekend. I would appreciate any kind of good thoughts and intentions. I leave tomorrow after school-ish, yeah, and I get back Sunday. So I would appreciate any thoughts and whatnot from all of you. There's a chance for some snow this weekend out here, so yeah, I'd appreciate it. So have a great weekend, all of you, and I will see you next week.